In this week's episode, we get to see Clarksephine go incognito, some weird Sanctum stuff happen, and a horrifying discovery that could change the dynamic between the original cast and the inhabitants of Sanctum. First up, let's take a look at what happened out in the woods with Octavia and Dioza. The show picks up their story hot on the tail of Xavier, who, through some clever maneuvering through the forest, catches Octavia and Dioza in some kind of weird quicksand type thing. Xavier tells them that the more they struggle, the faster they'll sink, and that he'll let them out if they tell them how many Nightbloods they have with them. Octavia, being as stubborn as ever, tries to fight her way out and begins to sink, while Dioza bides her time. She takes the time she has stuck here to try and make a connection with Octavia. Dioza asks her if she really wants to die, and that she'll do that if Octavia really wants it. However, Dioza has a bit of experience in the committed a heinous act and everyone wants you dead field of activities, and she tells Octavia that there is always time to change.
I've been there. Self-inflicted.
I see you failed at that too.
You're trying my patience, so I'm only going to say this once. As long as you draw breath, you can turn it around.
After this pretty tense discussion, Dioza tosses the gun and Xavier begins to try and wait them out. Octavia is dead set on not helping anyone but herself, and Dioza points out that she'll just tell Xavier what she wants to know if Octavia goes under. But the decision is made for Octavia as a giant radiation storm that Xavier calls a temporal flare rolls through. He throws a rope to Dioza so she can get out, but she's forced to leave Octavia behind. And at the last second, Octavia dives under the goo, shielding her face from the flare. Once it passes, Dioza digs her out and saves her life. This whole sequence of events was pretty action-packed, but it also served as a way to show that despite the fact that Octavia and Dioza were on opposite sides of a war, they do in fact have a lot in common. Mostly that they're horrible people, but hey, that's something. Next up, Josephine goes undercover as Clark to find out exactly how many more people they can use as hosts. Well, this whole episode was really entertaining. It also gave us a good look at just how the Primes operate, and even though they have done some questionable things, it's mostly acting out of self-preservation. But in the meantime, Josephine has her mission, and she meets up with almost all of the important people in Clark's life, and they are all immediately suspicious of her. She says things she doesn't normally say.
Chill out, she'll be fine.
Chill out.
What?
She calls Murphy John, she writes with the opposite hand, and she clearly doesn't understand Trigeta slang.
Interesting language. English lexical source, maybe a Creole via pigeon stage.
Which ends up being the big giveaway for Bellamy. Every scene with Josephine did a lot to fill in the blanks, and also planted the seeds for future plots, so much so that I couldn't possibly cover everything here without just going over the episode scene by scene. But most importantly, we got to really see who Josephine is. Who she is a sociopathic, manic, homicidal, scheming megalomaniac that is responsible for almost everything that has happened to Sanctum. Now sure, bad things did happen to her and the group that landed, but it's her reaction to the things that happen that make her evil. Despite this fact, she is an extremely interesting character to watch, and I can't wait to see where things go with her in the future. Finally, there's the big revelation of just what exactly happened in the past that led to the Prime's rise to power. Jordan has been really weirded out about what happened to Delilah, and after he confirms to himself that something weird is in fact going on, he decides to break into the hall where Delilah became Priya.
Like father, like son.
Well, it seems like everyone else has the same idea, since Bellamy and Murphy go looking for him, Josephine sees them go up there, and then Gaia shows up. It's just not a very covert operation is what I'm saying. Anyway, in the first room they find the skeletons of all the past iterations of the Primes, and Gaia notices they all have an indentation in their skulls that looks a lot like the Flame. Jordan isn't satisfied, and finds another hidden door that leads to some kind of laboratory. Josephine knows this isn't good, but has to keep her cover so she mostly stays quiet. While the group speculates about what this could all mean, Jordan jumps on the computer and tries to find some proof of what they did to Delilah.
Eureka, try that.
Go again.
Instead, they find a video of the first time Josephine is resurrected by Russell and Gabriel. Gabriel was able to take the memory backup that they all have in their heads and implant it into another brain. Obviously, this is pretty evil, but if I know the 100, there will most certainly be more information that paints this in a different light. In the meantime, everyone seems to be pretty disturbed by what they saw, but Josephine breaks character a little and tries to justify the whole act.
It's not murder if they go willingly.
Most don't buy it, but Murphy is enticed by the idea of becoming immortal, and by the end of the episode, Josephine reveals herself to Murphy and offers him just that in order to recruit him. So those are the major plot points from episode 5. But where do we go from here? During this episode, there were 2 mentions of oblation.
In the 6 years that I was on ice, not one single host was born. Not one. If you just let me run the breeding program, we wouldn't be facing extinction right now.
We're not talking about oblation again. Those are our people, human beings, not a herd of cattle to be culled.
It seems like it's supposed to be a sort of stand-in for Dianetics, the foundational text for Scientology, but I'm getting the sense that there's more to it than that. Abby doesn't seem to think too highly of it, but we as an audience don't know much about it at this point. So is Josephine the one behind turning the whole process of becoming a prime into a religion? It sure seems that way, but we'll have to wait to learn more. Well, that's all for this episode. Tune in next time for more recaps and analysis of the latest episodes of The 100.